The favor first technique. If you want someone to like you more, ask them for a small favor. Not a big favor, something simple. Maybe you're at work, and you ask someone if they can quickly explain how a process works. Maybe you ask a neighbor if they know a good local restaurant. Maybe you ask a friend for a recommendation. Most people assume that helping someone creates obligation in the other person. But often the opposite happens. The person helping begins unconsciously thinking, if I helped this person, I must like them. This is one reason small requests often create stronger relationships than trying to impress people. The key is keeping the favor small enough that it doesn't feel burdensome. People enjoy feeling useful. Give them the opportunity. The name repetition trick. When someone introduces themselves, repeat their name naturally. If they say, "Hi, I'm Michael," respond with, "Nice to meet you, Michael." The repetition locks the name into your memory, while also making the other person feel acknowledged. Most people forget names within seconds because they're thinking about what to say next. Repeating the name forces your brain to process it. You don't need to overdo it. Once or twice is enough. Use it naturally. People notice when you remember their name. Few people realize how powerful that is. The silence method. Ask a question, then stop talking. Most people rush to fill silence. That's a mistake. Imagine asking, "What happened during the meeting?" The other person gives a short answer. Stay quiet. Wait. Many people will continue talking simply because silence feels uncomfortable. Often the most useful information arrives after the first answer. The first answer is usually what they plan to say. The second answer is what they didn't plan to reveal. Silence is one of the cheapest tools available, and almost nobody uses it. Assume positive intent shortcut. When someone's behavior seems rude, assume there might be another explanation. The cashier who seems irritated may be exhausted. The friend who didn't reply may be overwhelmed. The coworker who seemed dismissive may simply be distracted. This doesn't mean accepting bad treatment. It means avoiding unnecessary conflict caused by incorrect assumptions. Most social friction comes from stories we invent. Replacing those stories with curiosity often solves problems before they start. Mirror one detail. People tend to trust those who feel familiar. One simple way to create familiarity is subtle mirroring. If someone speaks slowly, slow down slightly. If they're relaxed, become slightly more relaxed. If they're energetic, increase your energy slightly. Don't copy everything. That becomes obvious. Mirror only one element: posture, speaking speed, energy level. The goal is harmony, not imitation. Let people correct you. People enjoy displaying knowledge. If someone is passionate about a subject, allow room for them to teach. Instead of saying, "I know everything about this," try saying, "I thought it worked this way. Is that right?" Many people become more engaged when given the chance to explain. They feel competent, they feel valued, and you often learn something useful. Ask for advice, not help. People often resist helping, but they enjoy giving advice. Compare these two questions. "Can you do this for me?" versus, "What would you do in my situation?" The second question feels less demanding. It also makes the other person feel respected. Advice creates connection. People invest emotionally in ideas they helped create. The three-question rule. When meeting someone new, ask 3 genuine questions before talking extensively about yourself. Where are you from? How did you get into that? What do you enjoy most about it? Most people rarely experience focused attention. Giving someone a few minutes to talk about themselves makes conversations smoother and easier. The goal isn't interrogation. It's curiosity. Give specific compliments. Generic compliments are forgettable. Specific compliments are memorable. Instead of "nice presentation," try, "The way you explained that complicated topic made it easy to understand." Instead of "nice shirt," try, "That color actually works really well with your style." Specificity proves you noticed something, and being noticed feels good. The exit line formula. Many people stay in conversations longer than they want because they don't know how to leave politely. Use this formula. It was great talking to you. I'll let you get back to what you're doing. Simple, respectful, no awkwardness, no fake excuses. Most people appreciate the consideration. The forgotten detail test. Remember one small detail from a previous conversation, then mention it later. Maybe someone told you about a vacation, a pet, a project, a family event. The next time you see them, ask about it. Most people expect to be forgotten. Remembering details instantly separates you from the crowd. The elevator small talk formula. When trapped in small talk, use this sequence: observation, question, follow-up. The weather changed fast today. Did that affect your plans? What did you end up doing instead? The conversation now has momentum. No awkward silence required. The 2-second pause. Before responding to a question, wait 2 seconds, not 10 seconds, just 2. The pause makes you appear thoughtful rather than reactive. It also reduces the chance of saying something unnecessary. Many people speak at the speed of emotion. A short pause lets logic catch up. The "what was that like?" question. Whenever someone mentions an experience, ask, "What was that like?" The question is simple, but it invites stories. Stories create connection far more effectively than facts. People often reveal far more than expected when describing experiences. The shared enemy shortcut. Humans bond quickly over common frustrations: a delayed flight, terrible traffic, a confusing system, an annoying process. The key is keeping it light. Don't turn it into negativity. Use it as shared reality. Nothing creates instant rapport like a common challenge. The follow-up question habit. Most people ask questions. Very few ask follow-up questions. The follow-up is where interesting conversations begin. Someone says, "I started a business." Most people move on. Instead, ask, "What made you decide to start it?" One extra question often transforms a boring conversation into a memorable one. The one personal detail rule. When meeting someone new, reveal one small personal detail. Not a life story, just enough to feel human. People trust people, not resumes. A little vulnerability often encourages reciprocity. The group conversation entry hack. Approaching a group can feel intimidating. Instead of trying to command attention, listen for a moment. Identify the topic, then contribute something relevant. Groups usually accept people who add value to the current conversation, not people who try to redirect it immediately. The confidence walk. People form impressions before words are spoken. Walk slightly slower. Keep your head up. Avoid frantic movements. You don't need to look powerful. You simply need to look comfortable. Comfort often gets mistaken for confidence. The last impression principle. People remember endings disproportionately well. The final moments of an interaction matter. Leave with warmth. Leave with gratitude. Leave with positivity. A good ending often outweighs a mediocre beginning, because memory tends to keep the final chapter. Never reveal your number first. Imagine you're selling a used laptop. The buyer asks, "How much are you looking for?" Most people immediately name a price. That can be a mistake. If your price is lower than what the buyer was prepared to pay, you've lost money before negotiations even began. Instead, ask, "What were you hoping to spend?" Or, "What kind of budget do you have in mind?" The first number often becomes the anchor for the entire negotiation. Whenever possible, let the other person reveal it first. The flinch technique. When you hear a price, react slightly. Not dramatically, just enough to signal surprise. Imagine a contractor quotes a repair at $2,000. Pause. Raise an eyebrow slightly. Say, that's higher than I expected." Many people immediately begin justifying the price. Sometimes they even lower it before you ask. The flinch creates pressure without confrontation. Ask for more than you want. Experienced negotiators rarely start with their ideal outcome. they start slightly beyond it. If you'd be happy with a 10% discount, ask for 15%. If you like 2 extra days, ask for 4. This creates room to compromise. People enjoy feeling like they've won something. Giving ground strategically allows both sides to leave satisfied. The why loop. When someone says no, don't stop. Ask why, then ask another question. And another. For example, we can't do that. Why not? It's company policy. What part of the policy prevents it? Often the first answer isn't the real obstacle. The more you understand the reason behind the refusal, the easier it becomes to find another path. Use silence after offers. Suppose you make an offer. You say, "I can do $500. Then stay silent. Many people become nervous and start negotiating against themselves. I mean, maybe $450 or $425. The moment you make an offer, stop talking. Let the other person respond. Silence protects your position. Make them explain their price. When someone gives a number, ask, "How did you arrive at that figure?" This forces them to justify their position. Sometimes you'll discover hidden flexibility. Sometimes you'll discover weak reasoning. And sometimes you'll uncover factors you hadn't considered. Information is leverage. Questions create information. The walk-away advantage. People negotiate differently when they believe you have alternatives. Imagine you're buying a car. If the salesperson senses desperation, your options shrink. If they sense you're willing to leave, your leverage increases. The strongest negotiating position is genuinely being okay with walking away. When you need the deal less, you usually negotiate better. The alternative option method. Before any important negotiation, identify another option, another supplier, another apartment, another buyer, another job opportunity. Alternatives reduce pressure. Pressure causes bad decisions. Knowing you have a backup plan makes it easier to stay calm and patient. The deadline test. Whenever someone says, "This offer expires today," ask yourself, does it really? Artificial urgency is common. Many deadlines are flexible. Before rushing, verify whether the deadline is genuine or simply a tactic to speed up your decision. A rushed decision is often an expensive decision. Negotiate more than money. People focus on price. Often the better opportunities are elsewhere. Imagine you're accepting a job offer. Salary matters, but so do vacation days, remote work options, training opportunities, flexible schedules, performance bonuses. When money is difficult to move, other benefits may be easier to negotiate. Bundle multiple requests. Instead of negotiating one issue at a time, combine several. For example, if we can agree on delivery, installation, and maintenance together, I think we can make this work. Bundling creates flexibility. You can give ground in one area while gaining ground in another. This often produces better outcomes than fighting over a single point. Ask what would make it possible. When someone says, "We can't do that," try asking, what would need to happen for it to become possible? The question shifts the conversation from rejection to problem solving. Sometimes the obstacle is smaller than it first appeared. People often reveal useful information when invited to brainstorm solutions. The friendly reluctance method. Instead of appearing eager, appear thoughtful. Imagine a seller offers a discount. Don't immediately accept. Pause. Think. Then respond. People trust decisions that look considered. Quick agreement can sometimes make the other side wonder whether they offered too much. Calm hesitation often strengthens your position. The last-minute ask. Many negotiations aren't truly finished when the agreement is reached. Once major issues are settled, ask for one small additional benefit. For example, if we're moving forward today, could delivery be included? Or, could you throw in an extra accessory? At this stage, people are often more willing to agree because they want to finalize the deal. Small requests have a surprisingly high success rate near the finish line. The coffee shop principle. Imagine meeting a friend at a coffee shop. One friend orders first. The second friend suddenly becomes more likely to order something similar. Humans naturally follow social cues. The same thing happens in negotiations. People look for signals about what is reasonable, what is normal, what is expected. This is why the first number matters. This is why examples matter. And this is why framing matters. The lesson is simple. People rarely make decisions in isolation. They make decisions relative to what they've already seen. Whoever shapes the frame often shapes the outcome. The power of, "Is that the best you can do?" This simple question has saved people millions. When presented with a price, don't immediately accept. Ask politely, "Is that the best you can do?" No threats, no pressure, no confrontation, just the question. Many discounts, upgrades, and perks exist simply because someone asked. Most people never do. Split the difference carefully. Suppose someone offers $1,000. You ask for $1,400. They say, "Let's split the difference." Sounds fair, but notice what happened. They anchored the conversation around compromise. Sometimes splitting the difference works. Sometimes it's just another tactic. Before agreeing, ask yourself, is the midpoint actually fair, or does it merely feel fair? The higher authority technique. When negotiating, it's useful to have constraints. Instead of saying, "I don't want to pay more," you can say, "My budget won't allow it," or "I need approval before going higher." People often accept external limits more easily than personal resistance. It shifts the conflict away from you. The patience advantage. The person who is least rushed often wins. Imagine two buyers bidding on a property. One needs a home immediately. The other can wait 6 months. Who has more leverage? Patience creates options. Options create power. Many negotiations are simply contests between urgency and patience. The small win strategy. Don't fight every battle. Choose a few important points. Let smaller issues go. People become more cooperative when they feel they're winning somewhere. Giving away low-value concessions often helps secure high-value ones. Negotiation is rarely about winning every point. It's about getting the points that matter most. The written summary hack. After an important discussion, summarize everything in writing. An email, a message, a document. Something simple. This prevents misunderstandings. It also creates accountability. People often remember conversations differently. Written records reduce confusion before it becomes conflict. The emotion check. Never negotiate while angry. Anger creates tunnel vision. Frustration creates impulsive decisions. If emotions are rising, pause. Take a break. Return later. The negotiation will still be there. The mistakes made during emotional moments often last much longer. The curious negotiator. Most people enter negotiations trying to talk. The best negotiators enter trying to learn. What does the other side want? What are they worried about? What problem are they trying to solve? Every answer creates opportunities. Curiosity uncovers leverage faster than persuasion. The no doesn't mean no. Sometimes no means not today, not at that price, not with these terms, not yet. Treat rejection as information, not a dead end. Understanding why someone said no often reveals a path to yes. The best negotiation secret. The strongest negotiators aren't aggressive. They aren't loud. They aren't intimidating. They're calm. They ask questions. They listen carefully. They stay patient. And they understand that every negotiation is ultimately an exchange of information. The person who understands the situation most clearly usually has the advantage. Watch the feet, not the face. Most people control their facial expressions. Far fewer control their feet. Imagine you're talking to someone at a party. Their face is smiling. They're nodding. But their feet are pointed toward the exit. Often, the feet reveal where attention wants to go. People tend to orient their feet toward what interests them, or away from what doesn't. It's not a perfect rule, but it's a useful detail most people never notice. Notice who they look at first. A group hears surprising news. Maybe someone announces a promotion. Maybe someone tells a joke. Maybe something unexpected happens. Watch who people look at first. Humans often glance toward the person whose opinion matters most to them. A friend, a partner, a leader, a trusted colleague. The first glance can reveal invisible relationships. The eyebrow flash. When two people genuinely recognize each other, their eyebrows often rise for a fraction of a second. It's called the eyebrow flash, a tiny signal of recognition. You see it in airports, restaurants, office hallways, almost everywhere. Once you notice it, you'll see it constantly. It's one of the smallest signs of genuine familiarity. Doorway test. Imagine someone enters a room. What do they notice first? Some people immediately scan for friends. Others scan for authority figures. Others scan for opportunities. The first thing people look for often reflects what occupies their mind most. Attention reveals priorities. Fast answers versus slow answers. Not all pauses mean deception, but pauses can be informative. When someone instantly recalls a memory, it often sounds different from when they're constructing an answer. Imagine asking, "What did you do last weekend?" The answer usually comes quickly. Now ask, "Why do you think your boss really made that decision?" Notice the difference. One question requires recall. The other requires interpretation. Understanding this distinction prevents many wrong assumptions. Watch for delayed emotions. Sometimes people don't react immediately. They react a few seconds later. Imagine someone receives bad news. At first, they seem calm. Then 5 seconds later, the emotion arrives. This often happens because the brain processes information before emotion catches up. Delayed reactions can be surprisingly revealing. The topic change signal. Pay attention to what people avoid. Imagine asking, "How's your new job going?" The person immediately changes the subject. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe they're simply distracted. But repeated avoidance often indicates discomfort. People tend to move away from topics they don't want to explore. The avoidance itself can be informative. Genuine curiosity versus politeness. There's a difference between someone being polite and someone being interested. Polite people ask questions. Interested people ask follow-up questions. Imagine mentioning a recent trip. A polite person says, "That sounds nice." An interested person says, "Where did you go?" What was your favorite part? What surprised you most? The follow-up reveals the difference. The energy shift method. People often reveal strong emotions through sudden changes in energy. A conversation is moving normally. Then a certain topic appears. Suddenly they become animated, or quieter, or defensive, or excited. The change itself is often more revealing than the words. Pay attention to emotional spikes. They frequently point toward what matters most. Observe what they complain about. Complaints reveal values. Someone who constantly complains about wasted time likely values efficiency. Someone who complains about dishonesty likely values trust. Someone who complains about disrespect likely values status or fairness. What irritates people often reveals what they care about. Listen carefully. The complaint is usually a clue. Notice repeated stories. People repeat stories for a reason. Imagine a coworker repeatedly talking about a business they almost started, or a trip they once took, or a challenge they overcame. Repeated stories often reflect important parts of identity. People return to the experiences that shaped them. The stories they tell repeatedly reveal how they see themselves. What people brag about. Bragging isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's disguised as casual conversation. One person talks about money, another talks about intelligence, another talks about connections, another talks about discipline. What people showcase often reveals what they value most, or what they wish others would recognize. The restaurant test. Take two people to a restaurant. Watch how they treat the staff. Many people behave differently around those they don't need anything from. Politeness toward service workers often reveals character more accurately than politeness toward bosses. Status changes behavior. Character stays more consistent. The waiter test. A variation of the restaurant test. Watch how someone reacts when something goes wrong. The order is delayed. The drink is incorrect. The food arrives cold. Do they stay respectful? Do they become hostile? Pressure often reveals traits that comfort hides. Small inconveniences can expose surprisingly large differences in temperament. The phone placement clue. Imagine sitting across from someone at lunch. Where does the phone go? Face down, face up, in a pocket, on the table? The answer isn't definitive, but it can reveal priorities. A phone placed directly in front of someone often signals readiness for interruption. A phone tucked away often signals full attention. Tiny choices reveal habits. Watch how they treat strangers. Most people behave well around friends. The real information appears around strangers. Cashiers, drivers, security guards, receptionists, delivery workers, anyone who offers no obvious social advantage. Consistency across situations is often a stronger signal than charm. Notice what makes them laugh. Humor reveals worldview. Some people laugh at cleverness, others laugh at absurdity, others laugh at misfortune, others laugh at self-deprecation. Pay attention to recurring patterns. Humor often exposes values more honestly than formal conversation. The interruption pattern. Who interrupts? And who gets interrupted? In groups, interruptions often reveal status dynamics. The people who interrupt frequently may feel comfortable claiming attention. The people constantly interrupted may occupy a different position in the group. Conversation has its own hierarchy. You can often see it without anyone mentioning it. Observe what they remember. People remember what matters to them. One person remembers names, another remembers numbers, another remembers stories, another remembers dates. Memory isn't random, it follows interest. The details people retain often reveal where their attention naturally goes. The empty space test. Imagine a conversation ends. Nobody speaks. Some people become uncomfortable instantly. Others remain perfectly calm. Comfort with silence varies dramatically. People who can tolerate silence often appear more confident because they don't feel pressured to fill every gap. Watch for ownership language. Notice the words people use. Some say, "We achieved it." Others say, "I achieved it." Some share credit naturally. Others collect it. The language of ownership often reveals how people view teamwork and responsibility. The excuse pattern. Everyone makes excuses occasionally. The interesting question is what kind. Some blame circumstances, some blame other people, some accept responsibility. Repeated patterns matter more than isolated incidents. The stories people tell about failure reveal how they interpret the world. Notice their questions. Questions reveal priorities. One person asks about money. Another asks about freedom. Another asks about relationships. Another asks about risk. The questions people ask repeatedly often reveal what occupies their mind. Listen carefully. People tell you what matters without realizing it. The confidence versus certainty. Trap. Confidence and certainty are not the same thing. The loudest person in the room is not always the most knowledgeable. People who genuinely understand complex subjects often acknowledge uncertainty. Meanwhile, people with limited understanding sometimes speak with absolute certainty. Confidence is visible. Competence often requires closer inspection. The most reliable signal. If you want to understand someone, don't focus only on what they say. Watch what they repeatedly do. Words reveal intentions. Actions reveal priorities. Over time, patterns become impossible to hide. A single conversation can be misleading. A repeated behavior rarely is. When actions and words agree, trust grows. When they consistently disagree, believe the actions. Link names to images. Imagine meeting a man named Baker. Picture him wearing a giant chef's hat or standing inside a bakery. The more ridiculous the image, the easier it is to remember. Your brain remembers pictures better than words. Turn names into visual scenes. The stranger, the scene. The stronger, the memory. The story method. Suppose you need to remember milk, eggs, bread, apples. Instead of memorizing a list, create a story. Imagine a giant loaf of bread driving a car made of milk while throwing apples at a building made of eggs. Absurd stories stick. Random lists disappear. Use locations to remember information. Imagine walking through your home. Place information in different rooms. A phone number in the kitchen, a name in the bedroom, a date in the living room. This technique is thousands of years old. Your brain is naturally good at remembering places. Use locations as storage shelves. Recall before rereading. Most people read notes repeatedly. A better method is trying to remember first. Close the book. Ask yourself, what do I remember? The struggle strengthens memory. The act of retrieval teaches the brain that the information matters. The bedtime review. Before sleeping, replay the day. Who did you meet? What happened? What conversations did you have? Sleep helps organize memories. A quick review before bed tells your brain what deserves saving. Create mental hooks. New information sticks better when attached to existing information. If you meet someone named Rose, connect them to every Rose you've ever seen. If you learn a new city, connect it to a place you already know. The brain prefers connections over isolated facts. Use the first letter method. Need to remember a list? Take the first letter of each item, turn them into a word or sentence. The easier the pattern, the easier the recall. Your brain loves shortcuts. Chunk information. Imagine trying to memorize 582-941-42 difficult. Now break it into 582-941-7642. Much easier. The brain remembers groups better than long streams of information. Whenever possible, create chunks. Teach it to someone else. One of the fastest ways to discover whether you understand something is trying to explain it. Imagine teaching a child. Could you explain it simply? If not, there may be gaps in your understanding. Teaching exposes weaknesses and strengthens memory. Use multiple senses. The more senses involved, the stronger the memory. Read it, say it out loud, write it down, visualize it. Every additional pathway creates another route back to the information. The face feature trick. When meeting someone, immediately notice one unique feature. Maybe they have distinctive glasses, a beard, curly hair, a noticeable smile. Attach the name to that feature. Your brain needs an anchor. Give it one. Remember the beginning and end. People often remember the first and last parts of an experience best. This is why introductions and conclusions matter. If you're studying, pay extra attention to beginnings and endings. They often stay with you longer. The repetition timing hack. Repeating something immediately helps. Repeating it later helps even more. Review information after an hour. Then later that day. Then a few days later. The spacing strengthens retention dramatically. Turn numbers into images. Numbers are difficult. Images are easy. Some memory experts associate numbers with objects. A number becomes a candle. Another becomes a swan. Another becomes a trident. The exact system matters less than creating visual meaning. The conversation recall exercise. After meeting someone, challenge yourself. Without looking at your phone, recall their name, their occupation, one thing they mentioned, one thing they enjoy. This simple exercise trains attention and memory simultaneously. The association chain. Every memory can become a link. A dog reminds you of a park. The park reminds you of a friend. The friend reminds you of a birthday. Chains make information easier to retrieve. The brain naturally works through association. Use emotion as glue. Emotion strengthens memory. Think about events from years ago. You probably remember emotional moments more clearly than ordinary ones. The stronger the feeling, the stronger the imprint. When learning something important, connect it to emotion whenever possible. Draw it. Many people never use drawing as a memory tool. You don't need artistic skill. A rough sketch often creates stronger recall than pages of text. Drawing forces deeper processing. The brain pays attention when creating. Create a mental movie. Suppose you need to remember several facts. Turn them into a short film. See characters moving. See objects interacting. See events unfolding. Moving images are easier to recall than static information. The brain evolved to remember stories, not bullet points. The question method. Instead of memorizing answers, memorize questions. Ask, what causes this? Why does it work? How does it connect? Questions create curiosity. Curiosity improves retention. The brain remembers information it actively seeks. The 1-minute review. After learning something new, spend 60 seconds reviewing it, just 1 minute. This tiny investment often prevents complete forgetting. Most memory loss happens quickly. A brief review interrupts the process. Use landmarks for directions. When remembering directions, focus on landmarks: the gas station, the red building, the church, the large tree. People remember visual anchors better than street names. Your brain navigates through images. The category method. Suppose you're remembering many items. Group them into categories: fruits, tools, people, places. Categories reduce mental clutter. Organization improves recall. The Memory Palace Upgrade. Imagine your house again. Now make every memory exaggerated. A giant elephant in the kitchen, a floating television in the hallway, a motorcycle in the bathroom. The more bizarre the image, the harder it is to forget. The attention secret. Most memory problems are actually attention problems. People don't forget because they have bad memories. They forget because they never fully notice the information. The first step to remembering is observing. Attention creates memory. Repeat the last thing you hear. When someone tells you important information, silently repeat it. A name, a date, an address, a number. That tiny repetition significantly improves retention. The context trick. Try recalling information in the same context where you learned it. Memories are often tied to surroundings, smells, sounds, locations. Contexts create retrieval cues. The environment can trigger recall. The memory notebook. Your brain is powerful, but it doesn't need to store everything. Keep one trusted place for important information. A notebook, an app, a document. Free your brain from remembering what can be recorded. Save memory for what matters. Sleep before the test. Many people stay awake cramming. Often the better choice is sleep. Memory consolidation occurs during sleep. A tired brain struggles to retrieve information it already knows. Rest is part of learning, not the opposite of it. The golden rule of memory. The brain remembers what it believes is important. If information matters, interact with it. Visualize it, use it, teach it, connect it, question it. The more relationships information has, the harder it becomes to lose. Memory is not a storage problem, it's a connection problem. The 2-minute rule. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. Reply to the email, send the document, schedule the meeting, file the receipt. Small tasks have a strange habit of becoming larger when ignored. Often the fastest way to clear your mind is to stop carrying tiny, unfinished obligations. The first hour rule. The first hour of your workday is often the most valuable. Protect it. Avoid checking messages immediately. Avoid social media. Avoid unnecessary meetings. Use that hour for your most important work. Most people spend their sharpest mental energy reacting instead of creating. The meeting summary trick. At the end of every meeting, summarize the outcome. What was decided? Who is responsible? What happens next? Many workplace problems are not caused by bad decisions. They're caused by unclear decisions. A 30-second summary can prevent weeks of confusion. The 5-minute start. When a task feels overwhelming, commit to only 5 minutes. Not the entire project, not the entire report, just 5 minutes. Starting is usually the hardest part. Once momentum begins, continuing becomes much easier. Keep a waiting list. Many tasks are not actually yours. They're waiting on someone else. Create a list called Waiting On. A missing approval, a response from a client, a document from accounting. This prevents forgotten follow-ups and reduces mental clutter. Ask for clarification early. The most expensive misunderstandings happen at the beginning. If instructions are unclear, ask immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week. A 5-minute clarification can save 5 hours of rework. The email subject line hack. Make the subject line do the work, instead of question. Try budget approval needed by Friday, instead of update. Try website launch delayed 2 days. Specific subject lines get faster responses. People appreciate clarity. The draft first method. Don't edit while creating. Write first. Improve later. Many people slow themselves down by trying to make everything perfect immediately. Separate creation from correction. The work usually moves faster. The last 15 minutes. Spend the final 15 minutes of the workday planning tomorrow. What are the priorities? What needs attention first? What can wait? Starting tomorrow with a plan reduces decision fatigue. Future, you will be grateful. The calendar block trick. If something matters, schedule it. Don't trust memory. Block time for deep work. Block time for preparation. Block time for important projects. What gets scheduled usually gets done. What doesn't often disappears. The quiet competence advantage. Not every accomplishment needs an announcement. People notice consistent performance. Reliability builds reputation quietly. Many careers advance because someone repeatedly delivers when expected. Competence compounds over time. Reply with solutions. When reporting a problem, include a possible solution instead of, "This system isn't working." Try, "This system isn't working. I think these 2 options could help." Managers appreciate people who bring answers alongside issues. The one notebook system. Keep work notes in one place. Not 3 notebooks, not 6 apps, not random sticky notes. One trusted location. The fewer places information hides, the easier it is to find. The follow-up advantage. Most opportunities are lost because nobody follows up. A client, a manager, a coworker, a recruiter. A simple follow-up message often succeeds where the first attempt failed. Persistence is surprisingly rare. Learn the decision maker. Every workplace has unofficial influence. Sometimes the decision maker isn't the person with the biggest title. Pay attention. Who do people consult? Whose opinion carries weight? Understanding influence is often more useful than understanding hierarchy. The documentation habit. When something important happens, document it. A decision, a deadline, a request, a change in scope. Memory is unreliable. Records are not. Documentation protects everyone involved. The no surprises rule. Managers dislike surprises. Bad news is usually easier to handle early than late. If a project is behind schedule, communicate it. If there's a problem, communicate it. The earlier people know, the more options exist. The 3-sentence update. When giving a status update, keep it simple. What was completed? What is being worked on? What obstacles exist? 3 clear sentences often communicate more effectively than a lengthy explanation. The empty desk reset. Before leaving work, reset your workspace. Clear unnecessary clutter. Organize documents. Prepare tomorrow's materials. A clean start often creates a clearer mind. The energy audit. Pay attention to when you're naturally productive. Some people think best early. Others think best in the afternoon. Match difficult work to high-energy periods whenever possible. Don't waste peak focus on low-value tasks. The name memory hack. Remember the names of people throughout the organization: receptionists, assistants, security personnel, support staff. People appreciate being recognized. Small gestures often create stronger professional relationships than grand ones. The deadline buffer. Never plan around the exact deadline. Create your own earlier deadline. Unexpected delays happen constantly. The buffer protects you from emergencies. The question before the meeting. Before attending any meeting, ask, "What outcome do I want?" Without a goal, meetings become conversations. With a goal, meetings become productive. The promotion signal. People often assume promotions come from working hard. Hard work matters. Visibility matters too. If nobody knows the value you're creating, opportunities become harder to find. Make your contributions visible without bragging. The one thing rule. At the beginning of the day, identify one task that would make the day successful. Not 10. 1. If everything becomes chaotic later, at least the most important thing gets done. The interruption shield. Every interruption carries a hidden cost. A quick message can break concentration for much longer than expected. Protect focused work whenever possible. Constant switching drains mental energy. The repeat question. If multiple people keep asking the same question, create a system, a document, a template, a guide. Repeated questions are signals that information needs a better home. The office politics shortcut. Don't participate in every conflict. Not every disagreement requires involvement. Many workplace battles disappear on their own. Choose carefully which problems deserve your energy. The reliability multiplier. If you consistently do what you say you'll do, people begin trusting your word. Trust reduces friction. Trust creates opportunities. Trust is often built through small promises kept repeatedly. The career secret. Many people spend years trying to appear valuable. A simpler strategy exists. Become genuinely useful. Solve problems. Make things easier. Reduce confusion. Improve outcomes. Organizations rarely forget people who consistently make life easier for everyone around them. The 24-hour rule. Whenever you want to buy something non-essential, wait 24 hours. A new gadget, a pair of shoes, a kitchen appliance. Most impulse purchases feel less urgent the next day. The delay separates genuine need from temporary excitement. Many purchases solve a feeling, not a problem. Calculate cost per use. A $200 jacket worn 200 times costs about $1 per use. A $20 gadget used once costs $20 per use. The sticker price isn't always the real price. The value often depends on how often something gets used. Think in uses, not dollars. Shop with a list. Stores are designed to trigger impulse buying. Without a list, you react. With a list, you execute a plan. The list acts like a shield against unnecessary spending, especially when you're hungry. The subscription audit. Many people know their salary. Few know their subscriptions. Streaming services, apps, cloud storage, memberships. Every few months, check what is automatically charging your account. Small leaks eventually sink large budgets. The cash comparison. Before buying something expensive, imagine holding the equivalent amount in cash. Would you still spend it? Digital payments create distance. Cash makes the decision feel real. Sometimes that's enough to change your mind. Never shop emotionally. Bored people buy. Stressed people buy. Sad people buy. Excited people buy. Emotions often create expensive decisions. Whenever possible, make financial decisions when calm. Your wallet usually benefits. Ask for the discount. Many discounts exist simply because someone asked. Hotels, gyms, internet providers, repair services, furniture stores. The worst possible answer is no. The best possible answer saves money. The grocery store trap. Notice where expensive items are placed: eye level, end caps, checkout lanes. Stores understand attention. Your shopping cart often follows your eyes. Look around before making decisions. The best option is not always the most visible. The price anchor trick. Imagine seeing a watch for $5,000, then seeing another for $1,000. Suddenly, the second watch feels affordable, even though it still costs $1,000. The first price changed your perception. Companies use anchors constantly. Always evaluate the item itself, not just the comparison. The generic brand test. Before buying a name brand product, compare the generic version. Sometimes the difference matters. Often it doesn't. Many products share similar ingredients, manufacturers, or materials. The packaging changes more than the product. The 1-week rule. For major purchases, wait 1 week. If you still want it after 7 days, reconsider. If you've forgotten about it entirely, you've learned something useful. Time filters desire surprisingly well. Avoid monthly thinking. A salesperson says, "It's only $25 per month." Sounds small, but that's $300 per year. Many expensive commitments become attractive when broken into tiny pieces. Always calculate the full cost. The lifetime cost question. A car isn't just a car. There's fuel, insurance, repairs, registration, maintenance. The purchase price is often only the beginning. Ask, what will this cost over time? Not just today. The unsubscribe habit. Companies profit from your attention. Every promotional email creates temptation. Reduce temptation by unsubscribing. You can't impulse buy something you never see. Sometimes the easiest way to save money is removing the trigger. The replacement fund. Everything eventually breaks. Phones, appliances, computers, furniture. Set aside small amounts regularly. Future expenses stop feeling like emergencies when they're expected. The borrow before buying rule. Before purchasing an expensive tool or hobby item, see if you can borrow one first. You may discover you love it, or discover you don't need it at all. Testing is often cheaper than guessing. The hidden fee check. Before committing to anything, ask, what additional fees should I expect? Many costs hide in the fine print. Service fees, delivery fees, processing fees, cancellation fees. The advertised price is not always the final price. The restaurant math. A drink here, an appetizer there, a dessert at the end. Small additions often exceed the cost of the main meal. Tiny decisions accumulate quietly. Pay attention to totals, not individual items. The price per hour formula. Suppose something costs $300. How many hours did you work to earn that money? 3, 5, 10? Thinking in hours often changes how purchases feel. Money is stored time. Spend it intentionally. The upgrade question. Before upgrading something, ask, what problem am I solving? Many upgrades solve boredom, not actual problems. If the current version works well, an upgrade may be unnecessary. The sale trap. A discount doesn't save money if you weren't going to buy it. A 50% discount on an unnecessary item is still unnecessary spending. Sales create urgency. Need creates value. Know the difference. The comparison freeze. Too many options can stop decisions entirely. Research is useful. Endless research isn't. At some point, choose the best reasonable option and move forward. Perfection is often expensive. The maintenance habit. Taking care of possessions usually costs less than replacing them. Clean things, repair things, protect things. Maintenance feels boring. Replacement feels expensive. The forgotten money check. People often have money hiding in unexpected places. Unused gift cards, refunds, store credits, old accounts, reward points, occasionally, check. You may find money you've forgotten existed. The bigger house effect. The more space available, the more things tend to fill it. A larger closet invites more clothes. A larger garage invites more storage. Possessions often expand to fit available space. Be aware of the tendency. The convenience tax. Convenience has a price: food delivery, express shipping, ride services, premium upgrades. Sometimes convenience is worth it. Sometimes you're paying significantly more to save a few minutes. Know when you're paying the convenience tax. The price memory illusion. People remember prices from years ago, but markets change, inflation changes, supply changes, demand changes. Evaluate today's value, not yesterday's memory. The emergency fund secret. The purpose of an emergency fund is not growth. It's flexibility. It buys options. It buys time. It reduces panic. Money often provides freedom before it provides luxury. The opportunity cost question. Every purchase competes with something else. Buying one thing means not buying another. Spending now means not saving later. Money always has alternative uses. Consider them before deciding. The wealth multiplier. Many people focus on earning more. That's useful, but keeping more matters too. $1 saved and $1 earned both improve your finances. Good money habits compound quietly. Much like interest, small decisions repeated consistently often create the largest results. Photograph your parking spot. Imagine leaving a massive shopping mall. You spend 4 hours inside. When you come back, every row looks identical. Every section looks familiar. And suddenly, you have no idea where your car is. Before walking away, take one photo. Capture the row number, the nearest sign, anything distinctive. 5 seconds of effort can save 20 minutes of wandering. The landing zone method. Most people don't lose keys. They place them in random locations. Imagine arriving home. One day the keys go on the counter, the next day on the couch, the next day on a table upstairs. Eventually, you're searching the entire house. Create one landing zone: a bowl, a hook, a tray. Every important item goes there. Keys, wallet, headphones. The fewer decisions you make, the fewer mistakes you make. Screenshot before it disappears. Imagine receiving a temporary access code, a hotel reservation, a concert ticket, a parking receipt, an important message. Don't assume you'll find it later. Take a screenshot immediately. Many modern frustrations begin with, "I know I saw it somewhere." The gas tank rule. Some people wait until the fuel warning light appears. Others refill earlier. Imagine receiving an emergency call late at night. Now imagine discovering you barely have enough fuel to get there. Many experienced drivers refill when the tank reaches 1/4. It creates a buffer. Life becomes easier when everything isn't operating at the last possible moment. Keep a travel charger packed. Imagine arriving at a hotel after a long trip. You open your bag, no charger. It's still plugged into the wall at home. Instead of moving chargers constantly, keep one permanently packed. Many travel problems disappear through duplication. Use timers for boring tasks. Imagine cleaning the kitchen. The task feels endless. Now set a timer for 10 minutes. Suddenly there's a finish line. Many unpleasant tasks become easier when they're measured. You don't need motivation. You just need a timer. Freeze food flat. Imagine storing leftovers in bulky containers. The freezer fills quickly. Finding anything becomes impossible. Instead, place food in freezer bags and lay them flat. They stack like books. More space, less frustration, easier organization. Create a future. Me note. Everyone has thoughts they don't need right now. A restaurant recommendation, a gift idea, a movie someone mentioned, a future project. Create one note called Future Me. Whenever something useful appears, store it there. Your future self will eventually thank you. The bathroom check. Before leaving a hotel room, restaurant, airport, or office, do a quick check. Phone, wallet, keys. This habit takes 3 seconds, yet it prevents countless lost items. Many people discover something missing only after they're already far away. Pack by category. Imagine packing for a trip. Instead of randomly filling a suitcase, group similar items together: electronics, toiletries, clothing, documents. When everything has a category, finding things becomes faster. Chaos becomes structure. The grocery store loop. Most grocery stores place essentials around the edges: produce, dairy, meat, bakery. The center aisles often contain more processed and impulse items. If you're trying to shop efficiently, start around the perimeter. Then enter the middle only when necessary. The 2-bag trick. Imagine returning home carrying groceries. 1 trip becomes 3. 3 trips become 5. Keep reusable bags in your car permanently. Not in your house, not in a closet. In the car. The easier a habit is, the more likely it survives. The exit row strategy. At large events, take a moment to notice exits when you arrive. Concerts, sports arenas, festivals, convention centers. Most people only think about exits when everyone else does. Knowing your options early saves time later. The hotel room photo. Imagine checking into a hotel. Take a quick photo of your room number. Many travelers have spent embarrassing amounts of time walking hallways trying to remember whether they were in room 418 or 481. Your camera remembers so you don't have to. The receipt photo hack. Imagine buying something expensive: a monitor, a phone, an appliance. Months later it breaks. Now you need proof of purchase. Instead of relying on paper receipts, photograph them immediately. Paper disappears. Photos usually don't. Store emergency cash. Imagine losing your wallet while traveling, or having a payment card suddenly stop working. Keeping a small emergency amount hidden separately can turn a crisis into an inconvenience, not a fortune. Just enough to create options. The double alarm method. Important flight tomorrow morning? Important meeting? Job interview? Set 2 alarms. Different devices if possible. Most people only need 1. But the consequences of failure are often larger than the inconvenience of a backup. The one-touch rule. When possible, handle things once. Imagine opening an email. If it takes 1 minute to answer, answer it. Don't read it. Close it. Forget it. Then read it again tomorrow. Repeated handling creates unnecessary work. The power bank habit. Imagine your phone reaches 1% battery. You're lost. You need directions. You need transportation. You need contact information. A small power bank often solves problems before they begin. The best emergency tool is the one you never need. The 5-minute future. Whenever you're about to leave a place, think 5 minutes ahead. Do you need water? A charger? An umbrella? A jacket? Many problems become obvious when you mentally visit the near future. Life often rewards small preparation. The umbrella rule. People tend to remember umbrellas only when it's raining. Instead, think about weather before leaving. Preparation is easiest before it's needed, not after. The backup copy rule. Any document important enough to ruin your day if lost should exist in more than one place. Passport scans, contracts, insurance documents, travel confirmations. Backups are boring, until they're priceless. The default outfit. Many successful people simplify clothing decisions, not because they lack options, because they value attention. The fewer decisions spent on minor things, the more attention remains for important things. The waiting time trick. Imagine waiting in line. At the doctor's office, at the airport, at the bank. Keep one useful activity ready: reading, planning, learning. Waiting becomes less frustrating when it's useful. The 30-second reset. Whenever a room becomes messy, spend 30 seconds restoring order. Not 30 minutes, 30 seconds. Small resets prevent large cleanups. Chaos grows gradually. So does organization. The daily carry system. Identify the items you regularly need. Phone, wallet, keys, earbuds. Create a standard carry system. The fewer variables, the fewer forgotten items. Consistency reduces mistakes. The before bed preparation. Lay out tomorrow's essentials tonight. Clothes, documents, equipment, bags. Morning decisions are usually worse than evening decisions. Prepare while relaxed. Benefit while rushed. The duplicate essentials rule. Some items are worth owning twice. Phone chargers, reading glasses, umbrellas, power cables. The goal isn't luxury. It's eliminating recurring annoyances. The empty hands rule. Whenever leaving a room, take one item that belongs somewhere else. One cup, one plate, one document. Tiny actions prevent large messes from accumulating. The smooth life principle. Many life hacks aren't about saving time. They're about reducing friction. A charger in the right place, a key on the right hook, a note written at the right moment. Life becomes easier when small problems never get the chance to become large ones. The 10-minute delay. Imagine you're angry. Someone sends a message that irritates you. You immediately begin typing a response. Your heart rate increases. Your emotions take over. Instead of sending it, wait 10 minutes. Most emotional decisions lose intensity surprisingly fast. The message that felt necessary often becomes unnecessary. The delay protects you from temporary emotions, creating permanent consequences. The open loop effect. Imagine someone starts a story, then says, "I'll tell you the ending later." Your brain hates unfinished information. This is why cliffhangers work. It's why unfinished tasks stay in your mind. If you want to remember something important, leave a small piece unfinished. Your brain naturally wants closure. The small yes strategy. Imagine asking a friend for a huge favor immediately. They may hesitate. Now imagine asking a tiny favor first. A small question, a small commitment, a small agreement. People often move gradually. Small yeses frequently lead to larger yeses. The red car effect.
Imagine buying a red car.
Suddenly red cars seem everywhere. The cars didn't appear overnight. Your attention changed. The brain notices what it considers important. This happens with opportunities, problems, ideas, relationships. Often the world changes less than your awareness does. The decision fatigue trap. Imagine making decisions all day. Emails, meetings, messages, deadlines, purchases. By evening, even simple choices feel exhausting. The brain has limits. This is why many successful people simplify routine decisions. Save energy for decisions that matter. The progress illusion. Imagine spending 3 hours organizing your workspace, color-coding files, adjusting folders, creating labels. It feels productive, but the important project remains untouched. Sometimes preparation disguises itself as progress. Ask yourself, am I moving forward or merely preparing to move forward? The motivation myth. Many people wait until they feel motivated. The problem is motivation often arrives after action begins. Imagine going to the gym. The hardest part is usually entering the building. Imagine writing. The hardest part is often opening the document. Action frequently creates motivation, not the other way around. The future self problem. Imagine your future self as a completely different person. Tomorrow's version of you. Next month's version. Next year's version. Many people unknowingly dump problems onto future versions of themselves. Future you eventually becomes present you. Treat that future person like someone you care about. The default choice effect. Imagine a form with a box already checked. Most people leave it checked, not because they carefully evaluated it, because it was the default. Defaults are powerful. Many decisions happen automatically. Pay attention to what is being chosen for you. The loss aversion rule. Imagine finding $50. Feels good. Now imagine losing $50. Feels worse. Psychologically, losses often feel stronger than gains. Understanding this explains many strange human behaviors. People frequently work harder to avoid losing than to gain. The first impression trap. Imagine meeting someone on a stressful day. They seem rude. Months later, they're friendly and thoughtful. The first impression was incomplete. The brain forms judgments quickly, sometimes too quickly. Give people enough time to reveal who they actually are. The peak-end rule. Imagine two vacations. One is amazing throughout but ends badly. The other has several average moments but ends wonderfully. People often remember experiences based heavily on the peak moments and the ending. The final chapter shapes the memory, more than most people realize. The comparison curse. Imagine receiving a raise. You're happy. Then you discover someone else received a larger raise. Suddenly your happiness shrinks. Nothing changed, except the comparison. Comparison alters perception constantly. Protect your attention carefully. The spotlight effect. Imagine spilling a drink at a party. You assume everyone noticed? Most people didn't. They're busy thinking about themselves. People generally pay far less attention to us than we imagine. This realization can be surprisingly freeing. The ownership bias. Imagine borrowing a coffee mug. Then imagine owning it. Ownership alone increases perceived value. This happens with houses, cars, businesses, collections, ideas. People naturally overvalue what belongs to them. The sunk cost trap. Imagine watching a terrible movie. You're halfway through. You keep watching because you've already invested an hour. The hour is already gone. The question is whether the next hour is worth spending. Past investment should not dictate future decisions, yet it often does. The familiarity effect. Imagine hearing a song repeatedly. At first it's average. Eventually you start liking it. Repeated exposure creates familiarity. Familiarity often creates comfort. This principle appears everywhere. Advertising, politics, friendships, brands. The familiar frequently feels safer. The paradox of choice. Imagine choosing between 3 options. Easy. Now imagine choosing between 300. Suddenly the decision feels stressful. More options do not always create more happiness. Sometimes they create more doubt. The expectation effect. Imagine staying at a budget hotel. You expect little. The experience feels surprisingly good. Now imagine staying at a luxury hotel with enormous expectations. Minor flaws suddenly feel important. Expectation shapes satisfaction, sometimes more than reality itself. The mental shortcut rule. Your brain is constantly searching for shortcuts. Patterns, assumptions, predictions. These shortcuts save energy, but they occasionally create mistakes. The smartest people are often those who pause and question automatic conclusions. A little curiosity can reveal what assumptions hide. The 10-10-10 rule. When facing a difficult decision, ask yourself 3 questions. How will I feel about this in 10 minutes? How will I feel about this in 10 months? How will I feel about this in 10 years? Many decisions feel urgent because we're trapped in the present moment. Imagine receiving a rude message. Responding angrily might feel good for 10 minutes, but 10 months later, you may wish you had handled it differently. Time changes perspective. Use it before making important choices. The reversal method. Most people ask, how do I succeed? A different question is often more useful. How could I fail? Imagine trying to stay healthy. You could study dozens of fitness strategies, or simply avoid the obvious mistakes. Poor sleep, poor nutrition, no movement. Sometimes success is simply avoiding predictable failure. The coin flip test. Imagine you're stuck between 2 options. Flip a coin, not because the coin should decide, because your reaction reveals what you really want. When the coin is in the air, many people suddenly hope for a specific outcome. The answer was already inside them. The coin simply exposed it. The regret minimization question. Imagine yourself 10 years from now. Looking back at today's decision, which choice would create less regret? This question helped many entrepreneurs leave safe jobs. It has helped people move cities, start businesses, end relationships. Fear focuses on the present. Regret often lives in the future. The second-order effect. Most people think about immediate consequences. Fewer think about what happens next. Imagine taking a high-paying job. The first result is more income. The second result may be less free time, more stress, less sleep. Every decision creates a chain reaction. Look beyond the first step. The missing information rule. When you're uncertain, ask, what information am I missing? Many bad decisions happen because people rush to conclusions. Imagine buying a used car. You love the appearance. The price seems reasonable. Then you discover the maintenance history is missing. The missing information is often more important than the available information. The 80% rule. Many people wait for complete certainty. The problem is certainty rarely arrives. Imagine launching a project, starting a business, changing careers, moving to a new city. If you wait for 100% confidence, you may wait forever. Often 80% confidence is enough to move. Action provides the remaining information. The outside view. Imagine your friend comes to you with your exact problem. What advice would you give them? Notice how quickly the answer appears. Distance creates clarity. People are often wiser about other people's problems than their own. Borrow that perspective. The worst-case test. Sometimes fear grows because it's vague. Ask yourself, what is the actual worst-case scenario? Then ask, could I recover from it? Many risks become less intimidating when clearly defined. The unknown is often scarier than reality. The probability trap. People frequently confuse possibility with probability. Yes, something bad could happen. Many things could happen. The better question is, how likely is it? Imagine avoiding travel because a flight might be delayed. Possible? Yes. Probable? Not necessarily. Evaluate likelihood, not just possibility. The decision deadline. Some decisions improve with more time, others improve with a deadline. Imagine spending 6 months choosing between nearly identical options. At some point, additional thinking produces diminishing returns. A reasonable deadline prevents endless hesitation. The energy check. A decision may look good on paper, but does it fit your actual life? Imagine committing to a side business that requires 4 hours every night. Can your energy realistically support it? Good decisions work in reality, not just in theory. The default future. Imagine changing nothing. No new action, no major decision, no course correction. Where does that path lead? Many people evaluate new choices without evaluating the current path. Sometimes staying the same is also a decision. The single question. When choosing between options, ask, which choice makes future choices easier? Good decisions often create flexibility. Bad decisions often create limitations. Freedom compounds. Restrictions do too. The emotion check. Strong emotions are valuable signals, but they are unreliable decision makers. Excitement, anger, fear, jealousy, stress. When emotions are intense, delay important decisions if possible. The situation may remain the same tomorrow. Your emotions probably won't. The test run strategy. Before making a permanent commitment, create a temporary version. Thinking about moving? Visit first. Thinking about a new career? Try freelance work. Thinking about buying expensive equipment? Rent it. Small experiments often reveal what imagination cannot. The opportunity filter. Every yes creates a hidden no. Accepting one commitment means declining another. Accepting one project means losing time for something else. Ask yourself, what am I giving up in exchange for this? Every opportunity has a cost. The expert bias. Experts provide valuable information, but they also carry biases. Imagine asking a lawyer whether legal protection matters, a financial advisor whether investing matters, a fitness coach whether training matters. People naturally view the world through their expertise. Listen carefully, but think independently. The small bet approach. Not every decision needs to be life-changing. Sometimes the smartest move is making a small bet. Test an idea, experiment, gather information, then decide. Small bets reduce risk while increasing learning. The decision principle. Good decisions are not judged by outcomes alone. Sometimes smart decisions produce bad outcomes, and foolish decisions occasionally get lucky. Judge decisions by the quality of the process. Did you gather information? Consider consequences? Think clearly? That's what can be controlled. Results often cannot. Over time, good decisions tend to outperform lucky ones. The compound effect. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in 5 years. Imagine improving by just 1% every day. The change is invisible at first. A week later, nothing seems different. A month later, still not much. But after years, the gap becomes enormous. The same principle works in reverse. Small bad habits seem harmless until enough time passes. Life often changes gradually, not suddenly. The direction test.
Imagine boarding a plane.
If the plane is only 1 degree off course, nobody notices. But thousands of miles later, it lands in a completely different city. Life works similarly. Your future is shaped more by direction than speed. Many people obsess over moving faster. The wiser question is, am I heading the right way? The room effect. Imagine spending every day around ambitious people. People who exercise, read, build things, learn. Now imagine spending every day around people who complain, blame, avoid responsibility. The environment slowly becomes normal. Humans adapt to what surrounds them. Choose your rooms carefully. They shape more of your future than you realize. The action bias. Many people believe thinking creates confidence. Often the opposite is true. Action creates confidence. Imagine learning to swim. You can read books for months, watch videos, study techniques, but confidence appears only after entering the water. The same is true for most fears. Knowledge helps. Experience transforms. The time horizon advantage. Imagine 2 people. One thinks about today. The other thinks about 5 years from now. They make different decisions, different purchases, different friendships, different habits. Long-term thinking often looks boring in the short term, but powerful in the long term. The future rewards patience more than excitement. The identity shift. Most people try to change behavior. Fewer try to change identity. Instead of saying, I want to read more, try, I am a reader. Instead of, I want to exercise, try, I am someone who trains. Behaviors come and go. Identity tends to stay. Become the type of person who naturally does the thing. The boulder lesson. Imagine pushing a giant boulder. The first push does nothing. The second push does nothing. The 100th push appears to do nothing. Then suddenly the boulder moves. People call it a breakthrough. But the breakthrough was built by every invisible push before it. Success often becomes visible long after the work begins. The opinion filter. Imagine announcing a new idea. Immediately people have opinions, some supportive, some critical, some dismissive. Before accepting advice, ask, would I trade places with this person? If not, be careful accepting their roadmap. Not all opinions deserve equal weight. The energy investment rule. Time is important. Energy is often more important. Imagine having 3 free hours while exhausted. Then imagine having 1 focused hour while energized. The results are usually different. Protect your energy. Sleep, nutrition, movement, recovery. These are not luxuries. They are force multipliers. The 5 people principle. Look at the people you spend the most time with. Conversations become beliefs. Beliefs become actions. Actions become outcomes. Nobody becomes identical to their environment, but everyone is influenced by it. Relationships quietly shape destiny. The failure reframe. Imagine a toddler learning to walk. Falling isn't considered failure. It's considered part of learning. Adults often forget this. A failed business, a failed project, a failed attempt. The event itself matters less than the lesson extracted from it. Failure is information. Use it. The scoreboard problem. Imagine playing a game while constantly staring at the scoreboard. You stop paying attention to the game itself. Many people obsess over outcomes, followers, money, status, recognition. The people who succeed most consistently often focus on the process. The scoreboard eventually reflects the game being played. The invisible years. Every successful person has invisible years. Years nobody talks about. Years without recognition. Years without applause. Years spent learning, practicing, building. Most overnight successes arrive years late. The invisible years matter, even when nobody sees them. The comfort zone tax. Comfort feels safe, but it charges interest. Imagine avoiding every difficult conversation, every challenge, every risk. Life becomes easier today, but often harder tomorrow. Growth usually lives just beyond comfort, not miles beyond, just beyond. The attention principle. Your life is shaped by what receives your attention, what you read, watch, think about, discuss. Attention is like sunlight. Whatever receives it tends to grow. Direct it carefully. The comparison exit. Imagine running a race, but instead of watching the path ahead, you constantly watch other runners. You slow down, comparison steals focus. There will always be people ahead. There will always be people behind. The only comparison that consistently helps is with your former self. The responsibility shift. Responsibility is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean everything is your fault. It means you choose your response. Imagine two people facing the same obstacle. One blames, one adapts. The obstacle is identical. The response changes everything. Power often begins where excuses end. The legacy question. Imagine meeting yourself 20 years from now. What would that future version thank you for doing today? Reading more? Saving money? Taking care of your health? Starting the project? Making the phone call? The future is built through present actions. One day becomes many. The meaning principle. People can tolerate surprising amounts of difficulty when the difficulty has meaning. Parents understand this. Athletes understand this. Entrepreneurs understand this. Purpose changes how effort feels. The weight may stay the same, but meaning makes it easier to carry. The final shortcut. After 250 life hacks, one principle remains. Most improvements do not require extraordinary intelligence, or extraordinary luck, or extraordinary talent. They require awareness, pay attention, notice patterns, make small adjustments, repeat them consistently. A better life is rarely created through one dramatic decision. More often it is built through hundreds of tiny decisions made well. And that process begins with the next choice you make. The last 3 words technique. One of the simplest ways to encourage someone to keep talking is to repeat the last few words they said. Imagine a friend tells you,
I'm thinking about quitting my job.
instead of immediately giving advice, you simply say, quitting your job? Now they're likely to continue. Yeah, I've been unhappy there for months. You reply, for months? Again, they continue. The technique works because it shows you're listening while inviting the other person to elaborate. Many conversations become deeper when people feel heard rather than analyzed. Sometimes the best response is not a statement. It's an invitation. The summary mirror. People want to know they've been understood. Imagine someone spends 5 minutes explaining a problem. Before offering your opinion, summarize what you heard. Something like, so if I understand correctly, you're frustrated because the deadline changed at the last minute, and now you're worried the team won't finish on time. Immediately, 2 things happen. Either they say, exactly, or they clarify something you misunderstood. Both outcomes improve communication. Many arguments continue because people are responding to what they think was said instead of what was actually said. A good summary can save an entire conversation from confusion. The clarification question. Assumptions create unnecessary misunderstandings. Imagine a manager says, I need this done soon. What does soon mean? Today? Tomorrow? This week? Different people imagine different timelines. Instead of guessing, ask, when exactly would you like it completed? The same principle works in relationships. Someone says, we should spend more time together. What does that mean? 1 extra hour? 1 extra day? Clarification often solves problems before they begin. Specific questions create specific answers. The tell me more prompt. Many conversations end too early. Someone shares an interesting thought, a concern, an experience, and the topic immediately changes. Instead, try saying, tell me more about that. It's simple, yet surprisingly powerful. Imagine a coworker says, I almost didn't take this job. Most people move on. But if you ask, tell me more about that, you may hear a fascinating story. People often reveal their most interesting insights immediately after they think the conversation is over. The emotional label method. Sometimes people don't want solutions. They want understanding. Imagine a friend says,
I can't believe that happened.
You could immediately offer advice, or you could say, that sounds really frustrating. By naming the emotion, you show that you recognize their experience. Angry, disappointed, excited, nervous, relieved. When people feel understood emotionally, they're often more receptive to practical solutions later. Recognition comes before resolution. The pause before answering. Many people rush to respond. Few people pause. Imagine someone asks a difficult question during a meeting. Most people answer immediately. The confident communicator often waits a few seconds, not because they don't know the answer, because they're thinking. A short pause can make responses more thoughtful. It also signals that the question deserves consideration. Silence is not always uncertainty. Sometimes it's processing. The one-sentence rule. Before explaining something complicated, try describing it in a single sentence first. Imagine someone asks, "What does your company do?" Don't start with 10 minutes of details. Start with one clear sentence. The same applies to ideas, projects, plans, goals. If you can explain something simply, people understand it faster. Complexity often hides confusion. Clarity usually begins with simplicity. The story before advice principle. Advice is easier to accept when wrapped in a story. Imagine telling someone, "You should save more money." Not very memorable. Now imagine saying, "A friend of mine started saving just a small amount every month. 5 years later, he had enough for a down payment." Stories create pictures. Pictures create memory. Humans have shared stories for thousands of years because stories travel further than instructions. A lesson hidden inside a story often reaches people more effectively than a direct lecture. The curiosity upgrade. Many conversations become interviews. Question, answer, question, answer. Instead, become genuinely curious. Imagine someone mentions they moved across the country. You could ask, "Where did you move from?" Or you could ask, "What was the hardest part about starting over somewhere new?" The second question creates a richer conversation. Better questions often create better connections. Curiosity turns information into understanding. The agreement bridge. When disagreeing, start with what you agree on. Imagine someone says, "Remote work is terrible." Instead of immediately arguing, you might say, "I agree that some teams communicate less effectively when they're remote." Then add your perspective. People are more willing to listen when they don't feel attacked. Agreement builds a bridge. The disagreement can travel across it. The missing context habit. People often make statements without context. Imagine a coworker says, "This project is a disaster." That sounds alarming. But compared to what? Maybe they mean it's slightly behind schedule. Maybe they mean it's completely failing. Before reacting, gather context. Ask questions. Seek details. The meaning of information often changes when the surrounding context appears. The tone override effect. The same sentence can mean different things depending on tone. Imagine someone says, "That's interesting." It could mean genuine curiosity, polite disagreement, sarcasm, confusion. Words matter, but tone often carries the emotional message. Pay attention to how something is said, not only what is said. Communication exists between the words, not just inside them. The reverse explanation method. One way to test understanding is to explain the opposite. Imagine someone says, "Our customer service is excellent." Ask, "What would poor customer service look like?" Suddenly the idea becomes clearer. Defining what something is not often helps define what it is. The contrast sharpens understanding. Sometimes opposites teach more than examples. The question behind the question. People don't always ask what they truly want to know. Imagine someone asks, "Is this presentation good?" They may actually be asking, "Will people take me seriously?" Or, "Am I prepared enough?" Listen beneath the surface. The visible question is not always the real question. Understanding the deeper concern often leads to better answers. The assumption check. Communication problems frequently begin with hidden assumptions. Imagine you send an email and receive no response. One assumption says, "They're ignoring me." Another says, "They haven't seen it yet." Another says, "They're busy." Before creating a story, verify the facts. Assumptions fill information gaps. They are not always accurate. The fewer assumptions you make, the fewer misunderstandings you create. The listener's advantage. Most people enter conversations hoping to be interesting. Fewer enter conversations hoping to be interested. Imagine attending a networking event. One person spends the entire evening talking about themselves. Another spends the evening learning about everyone else. At the end of the night, which person do you think people remember more positively? Usually the listener. People enjoy being around those who make them feel important. Imagine meeting someone who remembers details from a conversation you had months ago. The name of your dog, a project you mentioned, a vacation you planned. Immediately you feel valued. Listening is often viewed as passive. In reality, it's one of the most powerful communication skills a person can develop. The person who understands others usually gains more influence than the person who talks the most. The simplicity filter. Complex language often creates the illusion of intelligence. Clear language creates understanding. Imagine a doctor explaining a medical condition using technical terminology you've never heard before. Then imagine another doctor explaining the exact same condition using simple everyday language. Which explanation would you trust more? Most people appreciate clarity. Experts sometimes forget what it's like not to know what they know. The best communicators can translate complicated ideas into simple ones. Before explaining something, ask yourself, how would I explain this to a teenager? Or, how would I explain this to someone hearing it for the first time? If the message becomes clearer, you've improved the communication. Simple is not the enemy of smart. Simple is often the result of understanding something deeply. The specific example rule. General statements are easy to forget. Specific examples are easy to remember. Imagine someone says, "Our customer service has improved." That's vague. Now imagine they say, "Last year, customers waited an average of 20 minutes for support. Now they wait less than 5. Suddenly, the improvement feels real. The same principle works in everyday conversations. Instead of saying, "I had a busy day," you might say, "I answered 50 emails, attended 3 meetings, and somehow forgot to eat lunch." Specific details create pictures. Pictures create memory. The more concrete the example, the more likely people are to understand and remember your point. The 3-part explanation. When explaining anything important, organize it into 3 parts. Humans naturally process information in groups. Imagine presenting a new idea to your team. Instead of listing 10 random points, structure it. What is the problem? What is the solution? What happens next? Or, what happened? Why did it happen? What should we do now? 3-part explanations are easier to follow because they provide a roadmap. People stop wondering where the conversation is going. They can focus on the message itself. Many effective speeches, presentations, and stories follow this pattern without people even realizing it. Structure creates clarity. Clarity creates understanding. The communication principle. After all the communication techniques, one principle sits above the rest. Most communication problems are not caused by bad intentions. They're caused by misunderstandings. People assume they've been clear when they haven't. People assume they've understood when they haven't. People hear different meanings inside the same words. Imagine 2 people arguing. One believes they're discussing facts. The other believes they're discussing feelings. Neither realizes they're having different conversations. The best communicators spend less time trying to sound smart and more time making sure understanding actually occurs. They ask questions. They clarify. They summarize. They listen. Because communication is not measured by what was said. It's measured by what was understood. And that small difference changes everything. The fairness instinct. Imagine 2 people doing the same work. One receives a reward. The other receives nothing. Even if both were content before, resentment often appears immediately. Humans have a powerful sense of fairness. In one famous experiment, monkeys were willing to reject rewards if they saw another monkey receiving a better reward for the same task. People are similar. Fairness matters more than many realize. In workplaces, relationships, families, communities, people can tolerate difficult situations surprisingly well. What they struggle to tolerate is feeling that the situation is unfair. The status radar. People rarely walk around consciously thinking about status, yet they constantly notice it. Who receives attention? Who gets interrupted? Who gets listened to? Who gets ignored? Imagine entering a meeting. Notice where people sit. Who speaks first? Who everyone looks toward before making decisions. Status signals exist in almost every group. Understanding them helps explain behaviors that otherwise seem confusing. Many conflicts are not really about the topic being discussed. They're about status, respect, and recognition. The scarcity illusion. Imagine seeing a sign that says, Only 2 left. Suddenly, the item feels more valuable, even if you didn't want it 5 minutes ago. Scarcity changes perception. Limited seats, limited time offers, exclusive invitations. Humans naturally place higher value on things that appear rare. Sometimes the scarcity is real. Sometimes it's manufactured. Either way, the psychological effect is powerful. Always ask, do I want this because it's valuable? Or, do I want this because it might disappear? The answers are not always the same. The familiarity bias. Imagine hearing a new song. At first it's average. Nothing special. Then you hear it again.
And again, and again.
Eventually, you start liking it, not because it changed, because it became familiar. Humans often trust what they recognize. Brands use this. Politicians use this. Advertisers use this. Familiarity creates comfort. Comfort creates preference. The effect is so strong that repeated exposure alone can influence how much we like something. Sometimes we mistake familiarity for quality. The ownership effect. Imagine someone hands you a coffee mug and says, "This is yours." A few minutes later, they ask if you'd sell it back. Most people suddenly value the mug more highly than they did before owning it. Nothing changed about the mug. Ownership changed perception. The same thing happens with ideas, investments, collections, businesses. People naturally place extra value on things they consider theirs. Understanding this bias helps explain why negotiations can become emotional. People aren't just protecting objects. They're protecting ownership. The tribal mind. Imagine walking into a stadium packed with thousands of people wearing the same colors. Strangers high-five each other, celebrate together, defend each other. Why? Because they belong to the same group. Humans evolved in tribes. For most of history, belonging to a group increased the chances of survival. That instinct never disappeared. Today, the tribes look different. Sports teams, political groups, religions, companies, online communities, even favorite brands. People often defend their group more strongly than they defend facts. When someone criticizes a group we identify with, it can feel personal. Understanding tribal thinking explains many arguments that logic alone cannot. People are not always protecting an idea. They're protecting an identity. The reciprocity engine. Imagine someone does you a favor. Nothing huge. Maybe they help you carry something. Maybe they give you useful advice. Maybe they buy you lunch. Sooner or later, many people feel a desire to return the favor. This is reciprocity, one of the strongest forces in human behavior. It exists in every culture. Relationships often grow because small acts of generosity create a cycle of goodwill. Businesses use reciprocity too. Free samples, free trials, free information. The principle isn't manipulation by itself. It's simply human nature. When people receive value, they often feel a desire to give value back. The authority shortcut. Imagine two people giving the same advice. One is wearing a lab coat. The other is wearing ordinary clothes. People often trust the first person more, even when both know exactly the same amount. Humans use shortcuts to evaluate information. Authority is one of them. Titles, uniforms, credentials, positions, experience. These signals help us decide whom to trust. Most of the time, that's useful, but it can also create blind spots. Authority should increase attention, not replace critical thinking. The smartest people listen to experts without surrendering their judgment. The halo effect. Imagine meeting someone who is exceptionally attractive, or charismatic, or successful. Without realizing it, you may begin assuming other positive qualities about them. Maybe they're intelligent. Maybe they're trustworthy. Maybe they're kind. But perhaps they are. Perhaps they aren't. The halo effect occurs when one positive trait influences our perception of unrelated traits. The opposite can happen too. A single negative trait can color everything else. This is why first impressions can be so powerful. One characteristic often casts a shadow over many others. Try to evaluate people trait by trait, not halo by halo. The first story wins. Imagine hearing about a situation from one person. They explain what happened, who was wrong, who was right, why everything unfolded the way it did. Hours later, you hear the other side, but something interesting happens. The first story often feels more believable. Even if it's incomplete, humans tend to anchor on the first explanation they receive. The first narrative creates a framework. Everything afterward gets compared to it. This is why early impressions matter, and why it's wise to hear multiple perspectives before reaching conclusions. The first story is rarely the whole story. Emotional contagion rule. Imagine entering a room where everyone is laughing. You begin smiling before you even know why. Now imagine entering a room where everyone looks stressed. Your mood shifts almost instantly. Emotions spread. Humans unconsciously mirror each other's emotional states. One anxious person can influence an entire group. One calm person can do the same. This is why leaders are often judged less by what they say and more by the emotional atmosphere they create. Your emotional state affects more people than you realize. Every room has a temperature. Emotions help set it. Effort justification effect. Imagine standing in line for 3 hours to enter a restaurant. Finally, you get a table. The meal is good. But was it really worth 3 hours? Many people convince themselves it was. Why? Because admitting otherwise would mean the effort wasn't justified. Humans often value things more when they had to work hard to obtain them. Difficult degrees, expensive memberships, exclusive communities, long waiting lists. The effort itself can increase perceived value. Sometimes that's reasonable. Sometimes it's a psychological trick. Not everything difficult is valuable. And not everything valuable is difficult. The curiosity gap. Imagine hearing someone say, "This simple mistake costs people thousands of dollars every year." Suddenly you want to know the mistake. That's the curiosity gap, the space between what you know and what you want to know. The human brain dislikes incomplete information. Questions create tension. This is why headlines often spark curiosity. It's why mysteries are addictive. It's why cliffhangers work. Curiosity is one of the strongest magnets for attention. The desire to close the gap keeps people engaged. The contrast effect. Imagine lifting a 10-pound weight. It feels heavy. Now imagine lifting a 100-pound weight first, then lifting the 10-pound weight. The same weight suddenly feels light. Nothing changed except the comparison. Human judgment is relative. A $50 meal seems expensive until it's placed next to a $500 meal. A small apartment seems tiny until it's compared to an even smaller one. Context influences perception constantly, often more than reality itself. The brain judges things against what came immediately before. The commitment bias. Imagine someone publicly announces a goal. "I'm going to run a marathon." Now they feel pressure to remain consistent. Humans like consistency, not only with others, with themselves. Once people take a position, they often defend it longer than logic would suggest. Changing your mind can feel uncomfortable, even when new evidence appears. Commitment is useful. It creates persistence. But flexibility matters too. Strong minds commit to ideas. Wise minds remain willing to update them. The crowd magnet. Imagine walking through a city street. Most restaurants are nearly empty. One has a line stretching outside the door. Without knowing anything else, many people assume the crowded restaurant is better. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But the crowd itself becomes evidence. Humans often look to other people when deciding what to believe, what to buy, where to go, who to trust. This is known as social proof. Imagine 2 videos online. One has 20 views, the other has 2 million. Even before watching, many people assume the second one is more valuable. The crowd acts like a shortcut. Most of the time that shortcut is useful. Sometimes it's misleading. The crowd can point toward quality, but it can also point toward popularity. Those are not always the same thing. The predictability preference. Imagine boarding an airplane. The pilot announces, "We have a clear route and should arrive exactly on time." Most passengers feel relaxed. Now imagine hearing, "We're not entirely sure what conditions we'll encounter." Even if the actual risk remains low, discomfort increases. Humans generally prefer predictable problems over unpredictable possibilities. A familiar inconvenience often feels safer than an unfamiliar opportunity. This is one reason people stay in jobs they dislike, remain in routines they've outgrown, or postpone major changes. The known feels safer than the unknown, even when the unknown might be better. Understanding this tendency helps explain why change often feels harder than it logically should. The identity defense mechanism. Imagine presenting someone with evidence that challenges one of their deeply held beliefs. You might expect them to carefully evaluate the new information. Sometimes they do, but often something else happens. They become defensive, not because the evidence is weak, because the belief is connected to their identity. When people feel a belief is part of who they are, questioning the belief can feel like questioning the person. This happens in politics, religion, sports, business, and everyday life. Facts are usually evaluated by the mind. Identity is protected by emotion. The stronger the identity connection, the stronger the defense. Understanding this makes many arguments easier to understand. People are often protecting themselves, not just their opinions. The validation hunger. Imagine posting a photo online, then checking for reactions. A few minutes later, checking again
and again.
Most people enjoy recognition, approval, acknowledgement. Validation is not a modern invention. Humans have always cared about what other people think. For thousands of years, social acceptance increased the chances of survival. Being accepted by the group mattered. Being rejected carried consequences. That instinct still exists. The challenge is balance. External validation feels good, but depending entirely on it can become exhausting. The happiest people often appreciate recognition without requiring it. They enjoy approval, but they don't build their identity upon it. The human nature principle. After exploring all these patterns, one principle sits above the rest. People are often more predictable than they appear, not because they're simple, but because human nature follows recurring patterns. People seek belonging. People seek meaning. People seek fairness. People seek recognition. People avoid loss. People protect identity. People follow emotion more often than they realize. The details change. The technology changes. The culture changes. But many underlying patterns remain remarkably similar. Understanding human nature is not about manipulating people. It's about understanding them. The more clearly you understand human behavior, the less confusing the world becomes. And often, the more patient you become with others. Because beneath all our differences, humans share more similarities than we think. The next physical action. Many tasks feel overwhelming because they're too vague. Imagine writing, "Start business." That's not a task. It's a project. Now imagine writing, "Send email to supplier." Suddenly the path becomes clear. The brain handles specific actions far better than abstract goals. Whenever you feel stuck, ask, what is the very next physical action? Not the entire journey, just the next step. Clarity often creates momentum, and momentum often creates progress. The focus sprint. Imagine telling yourself you'll work on a task all afternoon. The commitment feels heavy. Now imagine committing to just 25 minutes. No distractions, no notifications, no multitasking, just focused attention. Suddenly the task feels manageable. Many people can concentrate intensely for short periods. The challenge is maintaining it indefinitely. Focus sprints work because they create a finish line. The brain can tolerate discomfort when it knows the discomfort is temporary. Short bursts of complete focus often outperform hours of distracted effort. The single tab method. Imagine opening your computer. One tab becomes 3. 3 becomes 10. 10 becomes 20. Before long, you're switching constantly between tasks, reading one thing, thinking about another, responding to a third. Attention becomes fragmented. Try working with one tab whenever possible. One document, one project, one objective. The brain performs best when it knows where to look. Every open tab is a potential invitation to distraction. Sometimes productivity isn't about doing more. It's about reducing what competes for attention. The friction audit. Imagine two people trying to develop the same habit. One keeps healthy food visible. The other stores it in a difficult-to-reach place. One keeps workout clothes ready. The other must search for them every day. Small amounts of friction influence behavior more than people realize. The easier something becomes, the more likely it happens. The harder something becomes, the less likely it happens. Look at your environment. Ask yourself, what makes important tasks harder than they need to be? Then remove the friction. Small obstacles create large consequences when repeated daily. The project breakdown formula. Imagine being asked to build a house. The project feels impossible. Now imagine breaking it into thousands of smaller tasks. Foundation, walls, roof, electrical work, plumbing. Suddenly the impossible becomes manageable. Most overwhelming projects suffer from the same problem. They are viewed as one giant task instead of many small tasks. Whenever something feels overwhelming, break it apart. Then break it apart again. Progress becomes easier when the next step feels achievable. The energy matching system. Not all tasks require the same kind of energy. Imagine trying to do your most important thinking late at night when you're exhausted. Everything feels harder. Now imagine doing the same task during the time of day when you're naturally alert. The difference can be dramatic. Most people manage their time. Fewer manage their energy. Pay attention to your patterns. When do you think most clearly? When are you most creative? When are you most focused? Use those hours for important work. Save routine tasks for lower energy periods. A task doesn't just need time. It needs the right version of you. The batch processing rule. Imagine checking your email every 5 minutes. A message arrives. You stop working. Then another, and another. Soon your day becomes a series of interruptions. Now imagine checking email only 3 times per day. Morning, afternoon, evening. Suddenly your attention stays intact much longer. Batch processing means grouping similar tasks together. Emails, phone calls, administrative work, errands. The brain pays a cost every time it switches contexts. Reducing those switches often increases productivity without increasing effort. The shutdown ritual. Many people finish work physically, but not mentally. Imagine leaving the office while still thinking about unfinished tasks, unanswered emails, tomorrow's deadlines, problems waiting to be solved. The brain keeps carrying the load. A shutdown ritual creates closure. Review what was completed. List what remains. Identify tomorrow's priorities. Then consciously end the workday. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is allowing your mind to rest. Work ends more effectively when the brain knows where it will resume. The progress tracker. Motivation often fades because progress becomes invisible. Imagine exercising every day for 2 weeks. You may not see dramatic physical changes, but if you mark each completed workout on a calendar, the progress becomes visible. Humans enjoy evidence of movement, even small movement. A progress tracker turns invisible effort into visible proof.
A checklist.
A habit tracker, a notebook, a spreadsheet. The tool matters less than the feedback. What gets measured often gets maintained. The weekly reset. Imagine never cleaning your house. Small problems accumulate. Clutter grows. Eventually, everything feels overwhelming. Life works similarly. A weekly reset helps prevent accumulation. Review your schedule. Organize loose ends. Clear unnecessary tasks. Plan important priorities. 1 hour of maintenance can prevent many hours of confusion later. The purpose is not productivity, it's clarity. A clear week usually begins with a clear review. The environment design hack. Imagine trying to avoid eating cookies while a plate of cookies sits directly in front of you. Now imagine the cookies are in another room. The decision becomes easier. Environment influences behavior constantly, more than willpower in many cases. If you want to read more, place books where you'll see them. If you want to exercise, make equipment easy to access. If you want fewer distractions, remove them from sight. The environment often wins the battle before motivation arrives. Design it carefully. The distraction list. Imagine you're working on an important project. Suddenly a thought appears. You need to buy groceries. Reply to a message. Look something up. Pay a bill. Many people immediately switch tasks. Instead, keep a distraction list nearby. Write the thought down. Then return to work. The task is captured. It won't be forgotten. And your attention stays where it belongs. The goal isn't eliminating distractions. It's preventing them from stealing momentum. The momentum starter. Imagine pushing a car that's stuck. The first few feet require the most effort. Once the car begins moving, things become easier. Productivity often follows the same pattern. Starting creates momentum. Momentum creates progress. Progress creates motivation. When you don't feel like working, lower the barrier. Open the document. Write 1 sentence. Read 1 page. Make 1 phone call. Tiny beginnings often grow into substantial sessions. The hardest step is usually the first one. The priority ladder. Not every task deserves equal attention. Imagine arriving at work with 20 items on your list. Treating them equally creates confusion. Instead, rank them. What absolutely must be done? What should be done? What would be nice to do? Many people become busy because everything feels important. Productive people identify what matters most. The ladder creates order, and order creates focus. The input versus output rule. Imagine spending 3 hours reading about writing, watching videos about writing, learning strategies for writing, but never actually writing. That's input. Input is valuable, but output creates results. The same principle applies everywhere. Reading about fitness is not exercise. Learning about business is not building a business. Consuming information feels productive. Creating something usually matters more. Balance learning with action. Knowledge grows through use. The deep work window. Imagine setting aside 90 uninterrupted minutes. No messages, no social media, no notifications, no meetings, just 1 meaningful task. This kind of focused attention has become increasingly rare and therefore increasingly valuable. Many complex problems require extended concentration, not scattered attention. Protecting deep work windows allows important projects to move forward. What takes 4 distracted hours may require only 1 focused hour. Attention is often the bottleneck, not intelligence. The tiny deadline method. Imagine a task with no deadline. It often expands endlessly. Now imagine giving yourself 30 minutes. Suddenly decisions happen faster. Perfection matters less. Progress matters more. Small deadlines create urgency without creating panic. The brain works differently when a finish line exists. Not every task deserves unlimited time. Sometimes constraints improve performance. The completion bias. Humans enjoy finishing things. This is why crossing an item off a list feels satisfying. The problem is that people sometimes choose easy tasks simply to experience completion. Imagine avoiding an important project while organizing files instead. Technically, you're working. But are you working on the right thing? Completion is satisfying. Impact is more important. Be careful not to confuse finished with meaningful. The most valuable task is not always the easiest to complete. The productivity trap. Imagine becoming incredibly efficient at tasks that don't matter.
You answer every email.
Organize every folder. Attend every meeting. Maintain every system. Yet your most important goal remains untouched. Productivity can become a trap when activity replaces progress. Being busy and being effective are not identical. Before optimizing something, ask, does this actually move me toward my goal? Efficiency matters. Direction matters more. The productivity principle. After all the systems, tools, and techniques, one principle remains. Productivity is not about doing more things. It's about doing more of the things that matter. Most people don't need another app, another planner, another system. They need clarity. What matters? What doesn't? What deserves attention? What can be ignored? The people who accomplish the most are not always the busiest. They're often the clearest. Because once the important thing becomes obvious, decisions become easier, and productivity becomes less about managing time and more about managing attention. The confirmation bias trap. Imagine forming an opinion about something, a product, a person, a political issue, a business idea. Now imagine spending the next month looking for evidence that proves you're right. Most people do this naturally. The brain prefers agreement over contradiction. Information that supports our beliefs feels comfortable. Information that challenges them feels uncomfortable. The danger is obvious. If we only collect supporting evidence, we stop learning. The smartest thinkers actively search for information that could prove them wrong. Not because they enjoy being wrong, because they want to be accurate. Truth improves when opposing evidence is allowed into the conversation. The survivorship illusion. Imagine reading stories about successful entrepreneurs. You hear about the businesses that succeeded, the investors who became wealthy, the creators who became famous. What you don't hear about are the thousands who tried the same thing and failed. This creates a distorted picture. It's like studying only the airplanes that returned from battle while ignoring the ones that never came back. The visible examples are not the complete story. Whenever you see success, ask, what examples am I not seeing? Sometimes the missing information is the most important information. The availability heuristic. Imagine hearing a news story about a shark attack. For the next few days, swimming suddenly feels more dangerous, even if the actual risk hasn't changed. Why? Because the example is fresh in your memory. Humans often judge probability by how easily examples come to mind. Dramatic events feel common. Ordinary events feel rare. The brain confuses memorable with likely. That's why vivid stories often influence us more than statistics. Our memories are powerful, but they are not perfect measuring tools. The anchoring effect. Imagine walking into a store looking for a television. The first model you see costs $5,000. A few minutes later, you see another for $1,500. Suddenly, the second television feels inexpensive. But if the first television had never existed, $1,500 might have felt expensive. This is anchoring. The first number you encounter influences everything that follows. Real estate agents use it. Negotiators use it. Retailers use it. Even your own mind uses it. The anchor becomes a reference point, even when it has little connection to reality. Whenever a number seems attractive or unattractive, ask yourself, compared to what? Sometimes the comparison is influencing you more than the actual value. The sunk cost fallacy. Imagine paying for an expensive movie ticket. 30 minutes into the film, you realize you're bored. You aren't enjoying it. You'd rather leave. But many people stay. Why? Because they've already paid. The money is gone either way. Yet the past investment influences the present decision. This happens everywhere. Businesses continue bad projects. People stay in unhappy situations. Investors hold losing investments, not because the future looks promising, but because they've already invested so much. The past cannot be recovered. Only the future can be influenced. Good decisions focus on what happens next, not on what has already been spent. The hindsight illusion. Imagine watching a championship game. After the final score appears, people suddenly explain why the outcome was obvious. The signs were there. I knew that would happen. It was predictable. But before the game started, far fewer people were certain. This is hindsight bias. Once we know the outcome, the path leading to it seems clearer than it actually was. The brain quietly rewrites history. Uncertainty becomes certainty. Possibility becomes inevitability. This can create overconfidence. It makes us believe the future is easier to predict than it really is. The world often feels obvious only after it has already happened. The framing effect. Imagine a doctor tells you, "This procedure has a 90% survival rate." Most people feel encouraged. Now imagine hearing, "This procedure has a 10% mortality rate." The numbers are identical. The meaning is identical. But the emotional reaction changes. The frame influences perception. How information is presented often matters as much as the information itself. This happens in advertising, politics, negotiations, news reports, and everyday conversations. The next time something sounds extremely positive or negative, look at the frame. Sometimes changing the wording changes the feeling, even when the facts remain the same. The recency bias. Imagine reviewing an employee's performance over an entire year. Logically, you should evaluate all 12 months, but many people place extra weight on what happened recently. A great final month can overshadow 11 average months. A bad final week can overshadow an otherwise excellent year. The most recent information feels more important because it's easier to remember. Investors fall into this trap. Managers fall into this trap. Parents fall into this trap. Everyone does. The latest chapter is important, but it is not always the entire story. The optimism bias. Imagine asking a group of drivers whether they're above-average drivers. A surprising number will say yes. Mathematically, that can't be true. Humans tend to believe positive outcomes are more likely for themselves. People assume they'll avoid accidents, avoid illness, avoid failure, avoid setbacks. A certain level of optimism is useful. It encourages action. It encourages hope. But too much optimism can create blind spots. Balance optimism with preparation. Expect the best. Prepare for reality. The negativity bias. Imagine receiving 10 compliments and 1 criticism. Which one stays in your mind? For many people, it's the criticism. The human brain pays special attention to negative information. From an evolutionary perspective, this made sense. Ignoring a threat could be dangerous. Ignoring a compliment usually wasn't. The result is that bad experiences often feel stronger than good ones. A rude comment can outweigh a dozen kind ones. A single mistake can overshadow many successes. Understanding negativity bias helps explain why people sometimes focus on what's wrong even when many things are going right. The brain naturally scans for problems. You occasionally need to remind it to notice progress too. The false consensus effect. Imagine holding a strong opinion, perhaps about money, politics, relationships, or work. Without realizing it, you may assume most reasonable people agree with you. This is the false consensus effect. Humans often overestimate how common their beliefs are. The people around us reinforce this illusion. Our friends often share similar views. Our online feeds often show similar opinions. Our communities often think similarly. The result is a distorted picture. The world becomes larger and more diverse the moment we realize not everyone sees it the way we do, and that's usually a useful discovery. The Dunning-Kruger effect. Imagine someone learning a new skill. At first they know almost nothing. Then they learn a little. Suddenly they feel surprisingly confident. As they continue learning, they discover how much they don't know. Their confidence drops, then gradually rises again as genuine competence develops. This pattern appears in many fields. People with limited knowledge sometimes overestimate their understanding. People with deep knowledge often recognize complexity. The lesson isn't to doubt yourself constantly. The lesson is to remain curious. Confidence is valuable. Humility keeps confidence honest. The planning fallacy. Imagine you're moving into a new home. You estimate it will take 4 hours. 8 hours later, you're still carrying boxes. Almost everyone has experienced some version of this. Humans consistently underestimate how long tasks will take. projects, repairs, travel, writing, studying, construction. The planning fallacy appears because we focus on the ideal scenario, not the realistic one. The next time you're estimating time, think about previous experiences. History is often a better predictor than optimism. The outcome bias. Imagine two people making the exact same decision. One gets lucky, one gets unlucky. Most people praise the first person and criticize the second. But the quality of the decision may have been identical. Outcome bias occurs when we judge decisions solely by results. Good decisions sometimes produce bad outcomes. Bad decisions sometimes produce good outcomes. Luck exists, chance exists, risk exists. Judge decisions by the information available at the time, not only by what happened afterward. The choice supportive bias. Imagine buying a new phone. After making the purchase, you begin focusing on all the reasons it was the right choice. The battery is great. The screen is beautiful. The camera is excellent. Meanwhile, the flaws seem less important. Humans naturally defend their own choices. The brain prefers consistency. Admitting a decision wasn't ideal can feel uncomfortable, so we often highlight the positives and minimize the negatives. This bias helps us feel satisfied, but it can also prevent honest evaluation. The best decisions improve when we remain willing to acknowledge imperfections. The spotlight effect. Imagine walking into a room and realizing your shirt has a stain on it. Immediately, you become self-conscious. You assume everyone notices. You assume everyone is thinking about it. You assume it's obvious. But here's the reality. Most people are busy thinking about themselves, their own appearance, their own problems, their own conversations, their own worries. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect. We tend to overestimate how much attention other people pay to us. This bias creates unnecessary anxiety. People avoid speaking up in meetings, avoid trying new things, avoid taking risks, because they imagine everyone is watching. In reality, far fewer people notice than we think, and even when they do notice, they usually forget much faster than we imagine. The spotlight feels bright, but most of the time it's smaller than it appears. The fundamental attribution error. Imagine you're driving and another car suddenly cuts you off. Your first thought might be, "What an inconsiderate person." Now imagine you're the one driving aggressively. Suddenly the explanation changes. Maybe you're late. Maybe there's an emergency. Maybe you're stressed. When judging ourselves, we often look at circumstances. When judging others, we often look at character. This is called the fundamental attribution error. We assume other people's mistakes reveal who they are, while our own mistakes are explained by the situation. The reality is usually more complicated. People are influenced by circumstances far more than we realize. The next time someone behaves badly, it may be worth asking, what might be happening that I can't see? Sometimes understanding begins where assumptions end. The gambler's fallacy. Imagine flipping a coin. Heads, heads again, heads again, heads a fourth time. Many people begin thinking, tails is due, but the coin doesn't remember. The next flip remains 50-50. Humans often believe random events should balance themselves out quickly. This creates the gambler's fallacy. A roulette player sees red appear 5 times and becomes convinced black must come next. An investor sees a stock fall repeatedly and assumes it must rise. A sports fan sees a winning streak and expects a loss. The problem is that independent events do not care about previous events. The universe keeps no scoreboard. Randomness often looks less random than it actually is. Understanding probability means accepting that streaks happen, even when they feel impossible. The black swan blind spot. Imagine living in Europe hundreds of years ago. Everyone believed all swans were white. Every swan anyone had ever seen was white. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Then explorers reached Australia and discovered black swans. One observation shattered centuries of certainty. This is where the term black swan comes from, a rare event that changes everything. History is full of them. The internet, the smartphone, major financial crashes, unexpected inventions, global events nobody predicted. Humans are excellent at explaining the past. We're much worse at predicting the unexpected. The future often contains possibilities we haven't imagined yet. Wisdom comes from leaving room for surprise. The thinking principle. After exploring all these biases, illusions, and mental shortcuts, one lesson rises above the rest. The human brain is extraordinary. But it isn't perfect. It uses shortcuts, patterns, assumptions, approximations. Most of the time, those shortcuts are useful. Without them, daily life would be overwhelming. but shortcuts occasionally create mistakes. That's why good thinking requires awareness, not cynicism, not paranoia. Awareness. The goal isn't to eliminate bias completely. That's impossible. The goal is to recognize when bias might be influencing your judgment, to pause before conclusions, to question assumptions, to remain curious. The people who think best are rarely the people who believe they're always right. They're the people willing to update their beliefs when new information appears. Because intelligence is not just knowing things. It's remaining open to learning new things. And that mindset may be the most valuable mental shortcut of all. The seasons of life. Imagine planting a tree. You water it, protect it, care for it. Then you wait. Nothing dramatic happens the next day or the next week. Yet beneath the surface, growth is occurring. Life often works the same way. There are seasons for learning, seasons for building, seasons for struggling, seasons for harvesting the rewards of earlier effort. The mistake many people make is comparing their winter to someone else's summer, or their beginning to someone else's middle. Every life moves through different seasons. The challenge is recognizing which season you're currently in, and respecting it. Not every season is meant for rapid growth. Some are meant for preparation. The bridge you haven't crossed. Imagine standing before a bridge. On the other side is a problem you might face someday. Perhaps it happens. Perhaps it doesn't. Yet many people spend enormous amounts of energy worrying about bridges they've never crossed. Future conversations, future failures, future embarrassments, future disasters. The mind often suffers twice, once in imagination and once in reality, if reality ever arrives. Most of the bridges we fear never appear, and many of the ones that do appear are easier to cross than expected. Life becomes lighter when we stop carrying problems from futures that don't exist yet. The garden principle. Imagine two gardens. One receives attention every week. The other is ignored. Over time, the difference becomes obvious. Relationships work this way. Health works this way. Skills work this way. Businesses work this way. Whatever receives consistent attention tends to grow. Whatever is neglected tends to decline. Most important things in life behave more like gardens than machines. They require ongoing care, not one-time effort. The reward rarely appears immediately, but eventually, the results become impossible to miss. The long game advantage. Imagine two people. One wants immediate results. The other is willing to wait years. Who has the advantage? Often the second person. Because long-term thinking changes behavior. It changes investments, habits, relationships, learning, career decisions. Most people underestimate how powerful patience can be. The world rewards those who can continue working toward a goal after the initial excitement disappears. The long game often looks slow, until enough time passes. Then it looks unstoppable. The empty cup lesson. Imagine trying to pour water into a cup that's already full. Nothing new can enter. Many people approach life the same way. They become attached to existing beliefs, existing assumptions, existing conclusions. The problem is that certainty leaves little room for learning. An empty cup is not weakness. It's openness. The willingness to say, I may not know everything. The willingness to listen, to learn, to change. Growth often begins where certainty ends. A full cup feels comfortable. An empty cup remains teachable. The river and the rock. Imagine a river flowing toward the ocean. In its path sits a massive rock. The river doesn't panic. It doesn't argue with the obstacle. It simply keeps moving. Day after day, year after year. Eventually, even stone begins to change. Many people underestimate persistence because it lacks drama. We celebrate sudden breakthroughs. We rarely celebrate steady progress. Yet some of the most impressive changes in life occur through consistency rather than intensity. A skill mastered, a body transformed, a business built, a relationship strengthened. The river teaches a simple lesson. You do not always need more force. Sometimes you simply need to keep flowing. The price of inaction. Imagine standing at a crossroads. One path involves risk. The other involves staying exactly where you are. Most people carefully evaluate the risks of action. Few evaluate the risks of inaction. Imagine staying in a job you dislike for 10 years, avoiding a conversation that needs to happen, never starting the project you've been thinking about, never learning the skill you've always wanted. Doing nothing feels safe because nothing changes immediately. But inaction has consequences too. Life keeps moving whether decisions are made or not. Sometimes the greatest risk is assuming that staying still carries no cost. The slow growth secret. Think about bamboo. For years, some species appear to do almost nothing above ground. Yet beneath the surface, an enormous root system is developing. Then one day, visible growth accelerates dramatically. Many areas of life follow a similar pattern: learning, fitness, business, relationships, personal development. The effort comes first. The visible results often come later. This delay causes many people to quit. They assume nothing is happening. But progress is frequently invisible before it becomes obvious. The slow growth phase is not wasted time. It's preparation. The roots arrive before the height. The direction over speed rule. Imagine getting into a taxi. The driver immediately accelerates to high speed. One problem: the car is traveling in the wrong direction. Speed only helps when direction is correct. Many people become obsessed with moving faster. More productivity, more activity, more urgency. But activity alone guarantees nothing. The more important question is, where am I headed? A slow step in the right direction often beats a fast sprint in the wrong one. Life is not merely a race. It's navigation. The wisdom of boredom. Modern life offers endless stimulation: videos, messages, notifications, entertainment, noise. Many people haven't experienced genuine boredom in years. Yet boredom serves a purpose. It's often the doorway to creativity, reflection, planning, observation. Some of your best ideas probably didn't arrive while scrolling. They arrived while walking, waiting, driving, staring out a window. Moments when the mind had room to wander. Not every empty moment needs to be filled. Sometimes boredom is where insight begins. The invisible practice years. Imagine watching a musician perform effortlessly on stage, or an athlete competing at the highest level, or an entrepreneur running a successful company. What you see is the visible moment. What you don't see are the thousands of invisible hours, the practice sessions, the mistakes, the repetition, the frustration, the ordinary days. Success often appears dramatic because the preparation remains hidden. When comparing yourself to others, remember that you're usually comparing your behind-the-scenes experience to someone else's highlight reel. The invisible years count, even when nobody applauds them. The responsibility advantage. Responsibility is often viewed as a burden, but it can also be a source of power. Imagine two people facing the same problem. One spends all their time explaining why the situation isn't their fault. The other asks, "What can I do next?" The first person remains trapped. The second person begins moving forward. Responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for everything. It means focusing on what you can influence. The moment attention shifts from blame to action, possibilities begin to appear. Power often starts with ownership. The attention economy. Every day, countless people compete for your attention. Companies, algorithms, advertisers, news outlets, social media platforms. Everyone wants a piece of your focus. Why? Because attention is valuable. Where attention goes, behavior often follows. The books you read influence your thinking. The people you listen to influence your beliefs. The information you consume influences your decisions. Attention is one of the few resources that cannot be replenished. Once a moment is spent, it's gone. Guard your attention carefully. It quietly shapes your life. The freedom through discipline principle. Many people think discipline reduces freedom. In reality, discipline often creates it. Imagine two individuals. One spends money impulsively. The other follows a budget.
Years later, who has more financial freedom?
Imagine one person neglecting their health. Another exercises consistently. Years later, who has more physical freedom? Discipline feels restrictive in the moment, but liberating in the long run. Short-term freedom sometimes creates long-term limitations. Short-term discipline often creates long-term options. Freedom and discipline are not enemies.
They're partners.
The value of saying no. Every yes costs something: time, energy, attention, focus. Imagine accepting every invitation, every project, every request, every opportunity. At first, it feels productive. Eventually, it becomes exhausting. Saying yes determines what enters your life. Saying no protects what is already important. The challenge is that no often feels uncomfortable. But every meaningful commitment requires excluding something else. A strong life is built not only by what you accept, but by what you decline. The patience multiplier. Imagine planting a fruit tree. You cannot force it to produce fruit next week. Certain processes require time. The same applies to trust, knowledge, mastery, relationships, reputation. Many of life's most valuable rewards operate on delayed timelines. Patience is difficult because effort happens today while results arrive later. Yet patience multiplies the value of consistency. Without patience, people abandon worthwhile efforts too early. The reward often belongs to those who remain long enough to receive it. The compounding relationships effect. Most people understand compound interest. Few recognize that relationships compound too. Imagine meeting someone once. Helpful, maybe. Imagine knowing them for 10 years. The relationship becomes something entirely different. Trust accumulates. Shared experiences accumulate. Mutual understanding accumulates. Many opportunities in life arrive through relationships built long before they were needed. Friendships, partnerships, mentorships, family bonds. Relationships rarely produce dramatic overnight results. They grow gradually, then suddenly become priceless. The legacy question. Imagine someone describing your life 50 years from now. What would you want them to say? Not about your possessions, not about your job title, about your character, your impact, your relationships, your contribution. The legacy question changes priorities. It encourages long-term thinking. It shifts attention away from temporary distractions. Most people won't remember every achievement, but they often remember how someone made others feel. Legacy is created one ordinary day at a time. The final perspective shift. Imagine looking back on your current worries from 20 years in the future. How many would still matter? Some would. Many wouldn't. Time changes perspective. Problems that feel enormous today sometimes become stories tomorrow. Embarrassments fade. Mistakes become lessons. Setbacks become chapters. The future version of you will know things the current version cannot. This doesn't mean today's challenges are unimportant. It simply means they are not the entire story. Life is larger than any single moment. Remembering that can make difficult days easier to carry. The ultimate life principle. After hundreds of shortcuts, observations, lessons, and ideas, one final principle remains. Life is shaped less by dramatic moments than by repeated choices. A conversation, a habit, a decision, a response, a small action taken consistently. Most people spend their lives searching for a breakthrough, a secret, a shortcut, a single answer. Yet the truth is often simpler. Small actions repeated over time create extraordinary outcomes. A little more patience, a little more awareness, a little more kindness, a little more discipline, a little more courage. The quality of a life is rarely determined by one giant decision. It is usually determined by thousands of tiny ones. And the good news is this: the next one is always available. No matter where you've been, no matter what happened yesterday, the next choice remains yours. And that is where every meaningful change begins.